You cannot afford to miss a single moment of the next hour. Get ready to have your ideas about sexuality, love, and relationships blown wide open. It's time to get educated, entertained, and enlightened, as well as sexually empowered. You have now tuned into the Tantra Loves Sex and Intimacy Show. Now, here's your host, Tanya Diamond.
Hello, everybody. And I just have to say, I just so love that intro. I mean, that voice of the voice there is just something that every time I listen to my intro, I get this big grin on my face. And it's not just because they're talking about me. It's because how he's talking about me.
It's kind of hitting you right in that right spot.
It does. It hits me in the right spot. Thank you so much.
Just right.
It vibrates just right. Thank you so much, Gary. So this is Tanya, and today, of course, I have another very fascinating guest because I only pick fascinating guests, so that pretty well assures us of that. And how I came across this wonderful woman, she was a referral, but when I read this one particular thing about her, I knew that I had to have her on my show. And what I read was From Nun to Nudist. And I got to tell you, after that, it doesn't matter. It's all good. So, Moreah, can you say hello to us and introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Moreah, and I'm glad to be here.
And so I would like you to say your last name. I would also like you to spell your whole name for us, if you would.
Sure. Moreah is Moreah, rhymes with Gloria. Vestan is Vestan.
And you have a website, yes?
I have two of them, pleasuresandponderings.com, both plurals. And that's for my two books. And the other one is for my Nonviolent Communication, communicationcoaching.net.
Excellent. So we will be saying those again in a little while. So please, Nun to Nudist. I've got to just jump right into there. Tell me about that.
Well, I grew up one of 9 kids of an Iowa Catholic farm family, and I was taught that authority is what counted, and so I was a good girl. And at one time, the nuns at school said, if you think you have a vocation and you don't follow it, you'll never be happy. And I thought, well, I'm a good girl and all that, so God probably wants me in the convent. So I was in the convent for a year, good girl that I was, and the Mother General talked to each of us before we took the next step, and she said, are you happy? And I said, well, I'm not happy, but I'm satisfied. And she said, wise woman that she was, that's not enough for a bride of the Lord. So basically, Tanya, I got booted. And the good thing about that, I would still be probably a good nun today, as hard as that is for me to imagine, because the person I was back then knew nothing else than to do what God's will was, what authority told me.
Yeah.
So I was out, got back into my Catholic college at the time. I was a virgin when I got married at 26. I was still being a good girl. But then at a church camp, a priest who later left and married a nun said, if the only reason you go to Mass is because of mortal sin, you shouldn't be going. My mouth must have dropped. It's like here was an authority figure telling me it was okay to do something different. That was the start of my liberation. So it was probably another 5 or 10 years before I actually got down to the nudist camp in California and with trepidation, took off my clothes, just being sure everybody was just going to gawk when I got out there. Nobody paid much attention.
No.
And that's pretty much true. Any place I've gone, they might look at you and say hi and so forth, but you don't feel like you're on display or anything. So I think that's a heck of a way. It makes me feel free, and I don't have to be or do or wear any particular thing to get somebody's acceptance.
Yeah, that's a pretty fascinating journey.
Oh, yeah.
From good girl to nudist. And I'd imagine you probably still are a good girl.
I don't think so. I am not into authority figures. I do what Moreah wants most of the time. And I speak up for myself, and I think for myself, and I'm probably consistently inconsistent because that's part of who I am.
Well, and that's why I was saying I think you're a good girl, because to me, good girl really basically implies empowered. And
that's a different definition of good girl.
Exactly. For me, being a good girl is being the greatest sexually empowered human, woman that I can be.
Uh-huh.
Because anything else is a false illusion.
Well, boy, there's a lot of people in the illusion, aren't there?
There are out there. And it is really sad. I mean, as I raise my daughter, I have a 5-year-old daughter, And I'm really cautious. I actually never use the word you're being a good girl or a bad girl with her. I never use that because I don't want her to think there's some type of judgment on her behavior in that way.
Yeah.
And, it all starts there. I mean, that's what you're telling us, is that you were just programmed in this way that said, hey, this is how you should be. And you followed that path. That's amazing. So you really, that priest was the one that made you start questioning.
Yes, because otherwise I would not have waited till marriage either. But it was only hearing an authority figure give me permission, so to speak, that all of a sudden I just all hell or all pleasure broke loose or something. It didn't happen right away, of course, but that was the opening.
And what do you think? I mean, so explain that process just a little bit. So he tells you that, you go, wow.
Yeah, because this is what I lived by all my life, what my parents said, what the church said, because that was all I knew. I don't think any of my 8 siblings took it that seriously, but for some reason I did. And so to hear an authority figure, a priest no less, give you permission to do something that you'd been taught all your life you had to do. You had to go to Sunday Mass. It just clicked something in my head, I think, that said, oh, there's no one way only. There's another way to look at life. And it took a while. I mean, after 26 or some years of conditioning, it's not going to change overnight. But, boy, the person I am now, I would never have dreamed her back in age 18 or 25.
And that's somebody that's living in the present.
I hope so, yeah, most of the time. And pleasure, even on my cards, my Pleasures and Pondings card, it says pleasure as a spiritual practice. I don't know if I would use those same words today. Maybe I would. I don't see myself as religious at all, but I see myself as spiritual. I'm very much into personal growth and becoming all I can be and all that good stuff. But to me, pleasure is just as much a daily thing as eating and sleeping is.
Well, I certainly believe that. I know that lately I've been having a great experience with revisiting what it's like to live in the norm. And I can explain that a little bit, where generally I feel like I live outside of most people's stress and most people's baggage. I create my existence of pleasure and being in the moment. And I've been under some big, huge things lately that have made me kind of contract in and just focus on those. And I realized the other day, at first I was like, I can't believe this is just making me crazy. And then I thought, well, this is a great experience because I've been living a different way for so long that sometimes it's nice to have a remembrance experience of what most people are feeling like in their lives. And what I realized was I wasn't paying attention to anything but what was going on in my brain and these things that were happening that I don't consider great things.
Yeah.
I was just so inner focused and so focused on that I didn't even notice. I realized I was driving down the freeway, and it was probably 15 minutes before I noticed the sky.
Yeah.
And that's not how I am. Generally, I'm in my car, the top is down, so I'm checking out the clouds, the leaves and the trees. It doesn't matter what I'm going through, being in that experience of what's the weather like? What's happening? And I was so focused inward that I didn't even realize I'd gone past all my favorite trees. I'd gone past this place that I love to look at, and I thought, wow, yeah, time to get out of this.
Indeed. Well, and the law of attraction is such a cool one, and it's so easy to forget, but what we focus on is what we create in our life. Everything around us is an energy field, and it's so easy for me occasionally also to say, oh, my God, look at this bill, or dang, how come I don't have a lover right now, or whatever, and it's like, the more I think about poor me or victim or something like that, the harder it is to pull myself out and say, but look at the sky, look at the sun, look at the people around me, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, and I find that that's actually the part for me that's pleasure. When I'm experiencing visual, auditory, smell, olfactory, taste, all of those pleasures, I'm staying in the now. And when I get into that, I don't smell anything, I don't really see anything, I don't touch anything, I don't hear anything except my own dribble. my own boring stuff. Because let me tell you, if you get into your own stuff for long enough, it's boring. I mean, it's just boring. There's not a whole lot of dimension to it. Yes, it's, it seems chaotic or whatever it seems. But in the meantime, missing on all the pleasure is just not a way to live. Have you ever read any of Mama Gina's stuff?
No.
Speaking of pleasure, there's a woman named Mama Gina, and it's Gena. It's her book, and I hate the title, but it's an awesome book. The School of Womanly Arts.
Huh.
It's an incredible book. It's really about teaching women how to live in pleasure.
Oh, far out.
And I think that all women should grab that and check it out, because she really, making sure that you have things that when you wear them, they actually give you pleasure.
Yeah.
That you don't just buy things that you put on your body. You buy things that, it doesn't have to be extravagant. It's about, whether you like the color or the feel or the way it fits you. But that everything you own, whether, that glass that you have on the shelf over there, the dishes that you use, the sheets that you sleep in, that if you're going to spend money on something or you're going to buy something, spend it on something that actually gives you pleasure.
And have things around like that, too. I've still got a wine bottle from a wonderful trip I had with a lover about 9 years ago, and every time I look at that across from my bed, not every time, but often, I think, God, that was a trip.
Right, and so you can relive some of that pleasure. You can bring back some of that feeling. So I do think that women, especially when we're raising children and jobs and that type of thing, we forget about pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
We just get into the drudgery. And I remember a time when, way back when my life seemed to be going so quickly. And I remember sitting on the can in the morning and looking over, and it was like 6 a.m. And I thought, didn't I just do this? It felt like it was just 3 minutes ago that I did this. And I know people's lives are like that, where they basically just every single day is so rote and so routine that their life is passing them by in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
And I believe that's because they're not taking moments of pleasure.
Well, and one thing that I have done when I get myself caught up in feeling overextended, I've got too much to do or something, I've got a tally counter like they use in the movies to count. And every time I notice that I'm in that, oh, my God, I'm not done or something like that, I change the thought to it's time to stand up and stretch, or it's time to sing, or it's time to whatever, and then I do a click. And there's something about the visual thing of seeing me click and the sound of hearing the click and being able to look at the end of the day and say, wow, 13 or 27 times I brought myself to the present and did something that felt good.
Oh, that's pretty important, because I do know that we certainly have busy lives, and those of us that are out teaching and writing and doing that kind of thing can get very caught up in our lists of what we haven't gotten done.
Indeed.
I have Post-it notes, probably about 40 or 50 of them surrounding my desk and my computer, and it is one of my favorite things to be able to pull one off and throw it away.
I bet.
So sometimes I write Post-it notes that say things like, go to the bathroom. Make a personal phone call. Look through a catalog. So I make sure that my Post-it notes don't always say things that have to be done that aren't fun.
I like that.
I have one that says have sex. Oh, look, I've come to the Post-it note. Whoop, gotta go. That one I just repost. I don't ever throw that one away. So now how old are you?
67 going on 50.
67 going on 50. And is 50 a good age?
Yeah. The guys that I hear from the ads, the guys my age seem to be going for younger women. I didn't have nearly as difficult a time getting responses to my ads when I was 50. And besides, I probably have more energy and just plain energy than most people, 35 or 40 or 50. I just go, which is both good, and sometimes I need to slow myself down. But I'm much younger than my physical age is.
Well, I really love the fact that you said 50 as a younger woman, because I'm 47.
Ah.
I haven't considered myself a younger woman for a while, so thank you for that. Here comes Gary.
Actually, that 47's actually 37.
Is that the new 37?
Yeah, that's the way I've been handling it.
And, I think that, so you're saying men that are like in their late 60s, 70s, they're going for 50-year-olds now.
Most of them, yeah.
Which, I've got to tell you, sexually, it's a really interesting thing because I believe that women, we get better and better as long as we haven't bought into the whole, I've gone through menopause, I'm never wanting sex again. Or, because my body doesn't look like it's 20, I should never take my clothes off again. As long as we don't buy into that,
yeah,
I believe we only get better. There's no way we don't. How do you feel about that?
That depends on our perspective, I guess. If we're feeling discouraged and looking at the wrinkles and so forth, it might inhibit us a little bit. But if we just say, hey, I'm hot, or, I'm ready, or whatever, it's a lot more likely that we can live up to better at 70 than at 60.
So you can be my role model then, because what you're saying is you sound certainly juicy. You sound like a woman that's very much alive and still a sexual being.
Girl, I've got in the right feng shui part of my bedroom about 6 or 8 books, Sexual Reflexology and Sexual Secrets, and a few other things that I haven't actually tried out some of the things they've suggested, and I'm just waiting for somebody to try those out with. Somebody that I'm committed to, that I care about, he cares about me, and all that good stuff. I'm not into free and easy sex. I don't feel that responsive if I don't really know and care about the guy.
Well, I think that's actually really most women, how most women feel. I know that there's women out there that do engage in casual sex, and I understand from a lot of them that they feel like that they need to do that, so they're somehow sexually empowered by doing that.
Mm.
And I think that in actuality, having that connection, actually knowing somebody and being able to be vulnerable in a space of trust is actually more important.
I do too.
Yeah.
And I've certainly had letters from younger guys, which I find interesting, 40 or 50 or something like that, who are eager to have the possibility and so forth. And I have a son who's 37. I can't quite
Well, you don't
imagine.
need to go to 37. I mean, but, there's 45 or 50. I think 50. Generally, I've always been with men that were about 12 to 15 years younger than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because, like you, having that energy, I'm looking for somebody to be able to keep up with that energy.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, no, I think 50 and above is perfectly fine.
Oh, I do too. But I'm probably, being who I am and being as smart and adventurous and curious and all that as I am, I want somebody also that I can enjoy all those aspects of too, and that's more likely to happen mid-50s. My guess is I may be all wet on that.
Well, I think it's an interesting thing, because I've certainly met in my classes, I've met men in their 30s, early 30s, that are actually astounding, complex, deep human beings, and I've met men in their 50s that have no clue.
Yeah.
So I really don't think it's so much of an age thing. Obviously, at some point there becomes you can only have so much life experience. I mean, at 30, even if you have a lot of things going on and you're well-traveled and well-read, you still only have that much years of experience.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, but I encourage you to, certainly if you're getting emails from younger men, because, I teach in my classes, I think all younger men need to have some older women in their lives.
The only thing, since I'm not interested in casual sex, it's harder for me to imagine myself getting really turned on and committed to somebody who's that much younger. I don't want to just play around for sex's sake. I want to have sex in a relationship.
Yeah. Well, I understand that. I feel the same way as far as I've had plenty of what I call procreation sex, just genital friction sex. I definitely prefer having a spiritual aspect and component to it.
Well, and one way that I had enjoyed that for the last 3 years until about 2 months ago, I had a friend with benefits, which was wonderful. He was the guy I was lovers with 20 years ago, and we sort of went apart, and then about 3 years ago, we got involved again. We're not each other's soulmate. We love each other. We care about, we find it easy to talk to each other, but we both said from the get-go, as soon as one of us finds a soulmate that we can really be committed to, the benefits stop. Well, about 2 months ago, he and another friend of mine, which I found very interesting, decided they were very connected, and so there went my benefits, which is totally understandable. I was fine because I'm delighted for any time somebody has that deep affection and intimacy and so forth. but she's recently sort of put that on hold because she was getting much more involved than he was apparently. So.
Oh, and that's interesting, actually, knowing all the parties there.
I like it a lot better than if he had met someone that I didn't know, because now I'm still in both their lives separately. But it's lovely because I care deeply about both of them.
And she didn't ask you for references?
No.
Well, that would have been an interesting thing. If you're out there listening to us and you want to call in, we have a toll-free number, which is 1-877-230-3062. That's 877-230-3062, and you can call in and ask anyone questions, even Gary. I mean, I'm not sure what Gary will say, but it's always interesting. And he'll say it in that voice, and we really love to hear him talk. So I'm hearing you say friends with benefits. So, I mean, obviously you have a very open expression of your sexuality. I mean, as far as not casual sex, but actually ranging in a different way. It doesn't just have to be I'm in love, I'm married, which is far different from the 26-year-old virgin.
Yeah, and I don't want to be married again. I don't want to live with somebody, but I like the idea of commitment. I've had it before where we maybe get together midweek and then we spend the weekends together. That sounds just perfect to me because there's plenty of time for your own self and his own self, but plenty of sweetness together too.
So, and I think that women that have been married before and get divorced over 40, that aren't looking to have children anymore, really, I hear more and more women want something like that. Have you experienced more of your friends like that too?
I think people would be more interested in friends with benefits if they could find one. I mean, since I wasn't meeting the soulmate through the personals through Match.com and plentyoffish.com and so forth, that was a fine alternative. And my preference still is to be in a soulmate kind of relationship where there's just lots of juice and energy and common values and all that.
But I like the fact that you decided you weren't just going to be sexless until that happened.
Absolutely.
So you believe that sex is not just a luxury or something to be put on the back burner.
Totally. And now that my former Friends with Benefits is not in my life that way, hey, vibrator works pretty good in the meantime.
Well, I do think it's incredibly important to keep our sexual energy going. And I was talking to a group of women about that recently in a class, and one of them was saying, am I supposed to just fake it till I make it? Because she'd been sexually offline for so many years, she didn't feel sexual anymore. Mm. And the first thing I put her to task was actually loving her yoni. We call the vagina a yoni, the sacred space, and just holding herself, not even self-pleasuring, but just holding herself every day for 5 minutes. And she reported back to me within 4 days even, she started to feel more sexually interested.
No kidding.
Right. Just putting that energy. I said, it's not about titillation. Just send love. Just hold a static hold. Just put your hand over your yoni, hold it, breathe the energy in, just saying hello. Because I think what happens is women, if they're not, there's 58%, the statistic is 58% of women are not even interested in sex.
Wow. All ages?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And I think the problem there is that women are not interested in sex the way they've been having sex. So it's not the sex they're not interested in. If they had more stimulation and more affection and so forth, that could make a big difference. Right. And so what I tell women is, okay, when we had a little conversation right before we started talking on the interview, I say, ladies, if you're not having the sex life you want, that's your fault. And somebody might say to me, but I don't have a partner. It's like, well, that is not the only expression of sex, right? And you were just saying that. It's like your solo sex practice is just as important as when you have a partner. And if you don't do that, if you check out of your body and just turn everything from the waist down off, you will lose your sex drive. Well, and also the lubrication and so forth. I mean, it's actually a healthy thing to do to keep yourself active in one way or the other. Exactly, because everything, yes, you dry up, the hormones change, libido goes down the tubes, and this also happens for men. It takes a little bit longer for men. For women, if they haven't been sexually active for about 3 months, that's even self-pleasuring, already the hormones have dropped quite drastically. And for men, it takes a little bit longer because of how they're biologically wired. But men after 35, if they're not having regular sex and they're not self-pleasuring, will start to lose their sexual vitality as well. Yeah. And then they don't. Gary's counting, and then they don't. And then they don't. They don't present themselves in a sexually vital way, men or women. The opposite sex isn't attracted to him anymore.
Yeah. Well, and one way to keep that momentum going too is through fantasies. I've got some juicy fantasies, and it's so cool. With a partner or with yourself and so forth. If you can imagine being a stowaway on a boat and the captain has his way with you, etc. I mean, there's some cool fantasies.
So is that your next book?
Haven't actually thought about a book like that, no.
So we're going to take a break here, and we'll be coming back to talk to Moreah Moore and find out more about what is going on in the life of From Nun to Nudist. We'll see you in a few. Bye.
Hello, this is James Arthur Ray, and you are listening to the best network online, Contact Talk Radio.
Are you one of the 40 million sexless couples in the U.S.? Are you wondering why having sex leaves you feeling lonely? Are you suffering from the myths of sexual dysfunction? Do you know in your heart that there has to be more than what you're currently getting out of making love? To rid yourself of sexual ignorance, get more out of your lovemaking, and find out more about spiritual sexual connection, then you need to check out www.thetantrateacher.com to receive your free copy of the ebook called Secrets of the Tantra Teacher. Don't suffer another minute without the sexual loving and ecstatic bliss you were born to receive. Get to www.thetantrateacher.com right now. That's www.thetantrateacher.com.
Contact Talk Radio.
It's on the internet.
It's consciousness in action.
Information.
It's your connection to empowering information.
It's what matters to you.
It's on the internet.
Contact Talk Radio.
Listen live.
Join in on the online chat.
Contact Talk Radio.
We're making a difference.
And leading the way at contacttalkradio.com.
Is your sex life non-existent? Do sexual dysfunctions leave you soft? Is internet porn getting more than you are? Or are you paying more attention to porn than your partner? Have you tried talk therapy and it got you nowhere? You are not alone. You can be freed from sexual shame, guilt, and dissatisfaction. A visit to the Tantra Teacher is in order. Call now and mention you heard the Tantra Teacher on the radio and get a very special offer. Stop waiting for a miracle and call right now. 206-276-2735. Phone consultations or in person will get you the information you need to be successful in your love life. But you have to call now. 206-276-2735. Stop making excuses. Call the Tantra Teacher. 206-276-2735.
Be part of the show. Call now at contacttalkradio.com at 1-877-230-3062.
So we are back and talking about, of course, sex, because what else really is there to talk about in life? And I wanted to ask you...
Taxes?
Oh, no, let's not talk about taxes.
Wrong show,
no,
sorry.
That's sex and taxes. What do those have in common? So we were talking a little bit about how I was saying how I've met a lot of older women over 50, which they then think they're older, who are saying, no, I'm too old for sex. I'm too old to think about this stuff anymore. And how I had one client who is 89, who just 2 years ago at 87 decided that she didn't want to take on any more partners. So I'm thrilled by that, and I think we need more role models like her and yourself. Why do you think that you are still vitally sexual?
Probably because of who I am. I've always been, or at least in the last 20, 30 years, incredibly curious, and I love to discover, I love to explore, I love new experiences, and so, hey, what better new experience there is than discovering another person's body and soul and what turns him on, what turns me on? That's cool.
Yeah, that definitely is cool, and I certainly appreciate that in my life as well. Do you so obviously you haven't bought into the whole societal thing, though, about, well, I'm sorry, you're over this age now, sex is for the young.
Absolutely not. It is discouraging, however, when I find that age seems to be the thing. That seems to be the only difference than 10 years ago as far as the number of responses. I meet lots of guys because I talk to them first on the phone, like through the personals and stuff. I talk to them first on the phone, and if they sound interesting and like they read and have an active thinking life and are playful and all that, I meet them. But, chemistry doesn't happen just because you have all these things in common. So you probably have to meet 20 guys, maybe even more, to find one where there's really that connection. Right.
Well, here's part of it, too. What a lot of men are not realizing, and of course women don't realize it either, is that we are still going on evolution, our evolutionary cues. And so what happens is, as women age, the one thing that can happen is they lose that 12-inch difference between their bust and their hip measurement. So there's supposed to be a 12-inch difference between those two. Mm. As women age, they can tend to lose that measurement, and that measurement equates fertility. So men are still not realizing that when they're picking women based on procreation. Mm. And so when a man gets older, his evolution is still telling him, I need to be with somebody that I can procreate with, have a child with, even though he understands that's not what he's looking for. He's still picking in that direction. Uh-huh. And I think that's what you might be running into as well. So it's about educating men to understand that after a certain age, your evolutionary cues are not, they're just really not viable.
Indeed.
Unless you're actively wanting to have a child and you're 60 or 70 and as a man and you're wanting to procreate with somebody, then they're still viable. But other than that, you need to start looking at your different values in a partnership. But unfortunately, most men don't realize they're doing that. They just have this, I didn't have chemistry.
Yeah.
What they didn't have was the evolutionary cue, which is different than chemistry as well. Mm-hmm. Chemistry also changes, of course, as we age and our hormone levels change because our smell changes. Mm. So that's another thing. So what you might want to do, that might be an interesting experiment for you, is they make all these pheromones that you can wear. And if you actually find some really good one and try it on, I bet you would get a different response.
Interesting.
Better living through chemistry. So all of a sudden the guy would be going, wow, what is that? I am wildly attracted to you, because that's one of the evolutionary cues. Uh-huh. Now, you could say that's like wearing a padded bra or something that's not, it's not being totally legitimate. But I think we're just so lacking education, especially around sexuality and aging. Mm-hmm. Have you found any books out there that specifically address sexuality over 50?
I'm sure there are some, but I haven't read them.
Yeah, I think that, and the ones that I have seen I don't like, because they are saying that it's somehow you need to be different about it.
Yeah.
And I don't think sexually you need to be different about it. I do think you need to understand some of these things that I'm talking about, however.
Yeah.
Does that give you a little bit better insight into why 10 years ago might have been different?
Indeed.
All right. So now you're armed. armed with more knowledge. So I hear the statistics in nursing homes was actually this was about 10 years ago. I had read that HIV was being passed on in nursing homes at an alarming rate because nobody was using protection. So apparently there was a lot of activity happening in that later age. But that's especially, of course, when Viagra came out.
Right.
And then once the Viagra came out, the men were like, okay, woohoo, we can still do this again. Are you finding, you're friends with Benefits? How old was he?
Same age, 66 or 67.
And still a viable sexual man?
Has some difficulties.
And was he using a chemical then to help that out?
Yeah.
And you know that actually doesn't have to happen. That I just taught a class last weekend in Vancouver. The class was called the Tantra Exercises for the Penis for Enlargement in Length and Girth. But really the class was really about sexual vitality and how through the process of stress and capillary close down and muscle deterioration, men lose their sexual vitality and their ability to be erect and perform. So it's not something that actually has to happen to men.
Yeah.
And so I would like to say any of the men out there that are listening, or women that like older men, mature men, that they just need to get some information, because you can bring all of that back.
Well, and you might also put out to the guys who might be interested in connecting with this person can I give my email address?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, throw it out there.
It's Moreah, Moreah, at Comcast.net. And that would be a hoot. I would get a kick out of that.
And this is a deliciously sexy, mature, experienced woman that would love to engage in a connected sexual exploration. Is that correct?
You got it.
There we go.
But not just casual, not a one-time only kind of thing.
Right. Keep your one time at home. This is a woman that, explore one time. It's so funny, because I actually had a young man tell me, if you're willing, if you like the person enough to have sex with them once, why not stick around and find out how much better it can be? And
not bad advice.
Right,
yeah.
And that was from a young man. I was very surprised about that. He's a lifestyle coach, or a dating coach up in Vancouver. He's one of my students. And I loved that he said that, because that was that helped dispel the whole men only want to have sex with you once.
Yeah.
Evolutionarily wise, though, that is true. I'm sorry to say that men are programmed to spend their seed in one place and then move on. And so that's why ejaculation mastery for men is so incredibly important. If men learn to have orgasm without ejaculation, they can bond better with the woman they're with. Have you heard of ejaculation mastery?
I have, but I hadn't heard that made it easier to bond.
It does, because that, once again, we're still in that evolutionary stage, that if a man ejaculates regularly in sex with the woman he's with, he has an underlying dissatisfaction and a need to move on. And so he can be in conflict with his heart and his sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when they learn the skills of ejaculation mastery, and they can certainly have orgasm after orgasm without ejaculating, they tend to stay closer and have a more heart-bonded experience and have more sexual interest in the partner they're with. And this is one of the things that I think has happened, why pornography has become such an addiction, because it allows men to do that evolutionary thing of spending their seed with lots of different women while they stay in the same relationship. Fascinating thing. Now, you do something else that's really great. That's nonviolent communication. Tell me a little bit about that.
It was started by Marshall Rosenberg probably in the 60s when he was dealing with civil rights down in the South and stuff. And now he wishes he'd called it compassionate communication, because a lot of people hear nonviolent communication. They say, I'm not violent. But it's more about being compassionate, about connecting instead of correcting. Those are the words I like the best about the whole thing, connecting, not correcting, because when we get angry or scared or sad or hurt, it's so easy to make the other guy wrong instead of trying to understand what needs he or she was trying to meet. A simple example might be if somebody's an hour late from when they said they'd be there, instead of saying, you jerk, I want to be able to count on you, what the hell's going on, to be able to say, first of all, when making the observation, if you will, I notice you're an hour later than you said you'd be. I'm feeling kind of hurt and disappointed. I really count on your being on time because I want to be to the movie on time or whatever. Would you be willing to call me when you know you're late? That's sort of as a very simplistic kind of a thing, but it's connecting. It's connecting with my feelings and needs and trying to connect with what's going on for him or her. Because the basic thing of compassionate communication is that everybody does everything they do to try to meet a need, and might not be the best way when somebody rapes or murders somebody. Yes, they're trying to meet a need, and certainly there are better ways to meet that need, but they're not bad people because they do a thing that isn't working. It's not something we can approve of and say, oh, sure, go for it, but to understand that everybody's trying to meet their needs. And I tell you, it's made a whole lot of difference with me many, many times in the 10 years that I've been practicing it. I'm going to have a class, in fact, on Sunday, and if people are interested, they can also email Moreah at Comcast.net, and I'll be glad to send out the information. And it's about dealing with feelings and needs around the economy and the holidays and so forth, because that brings up a lot of stuff. And people get scared and anxious and all this kind of stuff often around both the economy and the holidays.
Well, they sure do, and around sex. That's probably one of the most difficult arenas to talk to your partner about because, first of all, we don't have a lot of experience in communicating sexually. And second, there's a lot of fear and insecurity already riding in there and doubt about whether or not your needs will actually be met if you ask for them.
You know, I never thought of doing an NVC, Nonviolent Communication thing on sex, and I can't imagine why I haven't. That would be great fun.
I would love to get together with you and help sponsor that and actually put you on my site and maybe do something with that with you.
Oh, that would be hot. Well, another thing that's been very fun is when people are trying to write letters or make phone calls to people that they're estranged from, parents, kids, co-workers, whatever. I've done this several times where they'll send a letter or say the words that they're planning to say, and I'll point out the things that are likely to get them in trouble. You know, I had a recent friend who was talking about something that her dad had done that she considered racist. And the minute you use a label like racist, you know, the other person's going to get defensive or whatever. So we played with that and found words about her own feelings and needs that the other person wouldn't take offense from.
So in this format, you're coming from, when you're speaking to somebody, you want to come from an I feel type of space, right?
Yeah, or are you feeling because you're wanting, not are you feeling something because I did it, because each of us feels something because of some needs we have. So I'm feeling hurt because I need consideration. Are you feeling scared because you need comfort? That kind of thing.
So you can use the word you.
Sure, as long as it's, are you feeling scared because you're needing safety or whatever it is, not because of something I did. We're trying to own the feelings and needs that we have, and they're trying to own the feelings and needs they have. So
I feel you're a jerk doesn't really work.
No.
I feel like you're being an asshole isn't very good either.
No, because you're not observing the thing they did. When you did such and such, I felt angry because I want respect. So you're not making the other guy bad, even though he did something you didn't like.
Okay, so I have a need, and I tell my partner I have this need, and I can say I feel that I would like to be touched more. That's an okay thing to say?
Sure, and if you're staying with the feelings, you'd say an actual feeling word, not I feel that, because then it becomes a thought. But I feel a little nervous right now because I'm anxious about bringing this up, but I really love touch, and if you would touch me here, it would feel so good. I mean, use your own words, of course,
right.
but if you own it yourself, instead of saying, you never touch me, or you don't take enough time, well, they don't know exactly what you need if you don't come out and tell them.
Right. And so what happens if, because in part of this communication, of course, the other person can just decline to meet your need, right?
Oh, certainly. Because otherwise, the fourth step, which is a request, you can say, when you go right for genital sex and there's no foreplay, I feel sort of sad or lonely because I need more contact. Would you be willing to spend 5 minutes doing X? That's a request. But if he says no and you get mad, then it was a demand. So both parties always have the right to say no, and then you can say, oh, well, okay, that's not okay. Would you consider such and such? And at some point, if they turn down every request you make, you might say, I think I'm going now.
Okay, so, well then, and this is an interesting thing for me because I always like to break everything down into its most simplistic format. So it actually is, even though it's not phrased in a demand, it actually is because there's a consequence.
No, it's not a demand unless you don't allow the other person to say no. It's a request when you ask for something you want. The only way you know it was a demand is if he or she says no and you say, well, hell with you then.
But eventually if they say no, you're going to say, well, I'm leaving now. Or you're going to say, I'm not having sex with you now. And then what?
To me, that makes total sense because I don't think there's enough time in this life to spend lots of time working things out with everybody there is. I think if there's somebody, I rent out 6 rooms in my home, and I had one gal that was here for quite a long time, and we did not see eye to eye, so we just plain agreed that we'd talk only about household things. We would not talk about feelings and needs because when we did, she said things I didn't like, and probably the other way too. There was just something we couldn't get along with each other. So I think it's smart. In fact, Marshall has a thing saying me first and always, because if we don't take care of our needs and our preferences and so forth, we might end up doing things out of resentment or frustration or fear or something. That's not a way to live.
Okay, so at some point, I talk about this point only because I believe that all relationships are a series of requests and or consequences to that. Really, because let's say that you do not want to have sex if you don't have foreplay. And your partner is like not up for that. Well, the consequence is that you don't have sex.
And as long as you can do it in a way that doesn't make the other person feel like they're bad. If you're in a marriage, for instance, and you know you're not going to leave it, if you can do it in a way that says, gee, I'm sorry, without the foreplay, it just doesn't do it for me. Maybe we can find another way to get our needs met. I'm not sure what that might be, depending on the circumstances. But if you do it vindictively and say, if you're not doing that, then I'm out of here. But you've chosen to live together, that's not cool.
So it's really then what we're talking about isn't so much the semantics. We're talking about the intent.
Absolutely, about the connecting, not correcting. Because if you say, if there's no foreplay, I'm out of here, that's correcting. That's telling him what he's got to do. But if you're connecting, you're saying, this just doesn't work for me. I feel worse after intercourse because I couldn't get off because I didn't have the foreplay. So unless we can work something out, let's just cuddle or let's just whatever.
Well, it sounds certainly like compassionate communication, which is what you were saying he would rather have called it.
Yes.
It's certainly coming from a place of compassion. And I'm wondering, so you've been practicing this for 10 years?
Yeah, and I've been teaching about 4 years.
Okay, and how long does it take, do you think, to change that around?
It depends on your attitude a whole lot, because if you talk to people that you want to be compassionate toward and say, I've learned a new way of connecting instead of correcting, of really trying to get into each other's needs. If you notice that I'm doing something that's putting you off or making you upset, I would value if you would tell me, and I will try to be very conscious of it. So it's very much a conscious thing, and nobody's going to do it right all the time. In Seattle, we've got a website called nwcompass.org. It stands for Northwest Compassionate Communication. But there are several trainings going on and lots of material about NVC, just as there is on my compassionatecommunication.net. And if people want resources, I love to Google. I love to find resources. I would be delighted to pass on resources so that they could learn everything there was to learn about nonviolent communication, or a dozen other subjects too, because I love doing that.
So
and again, Moreah at Comcast.net.
So do you feel like, and you feel like it's made a big difference in how you communicate, obviously?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the housemates that I worked with in the past that was moving in, he was stuck on the fact that the smaller room cost more than he wanted to pay. And there was a part of me that said, but I got $30 more a month for that last time. And we talked back and forth and listened back and forth. And finally we did a compromise that now I'm looking, when I was ready to have him move in, I was looking forward to having him move in instead of feeling any resentment. It's just a matter, again, of connecting. I know he's trying to meet a need. He knows I'm trying to meet a need. Let's see how we can do this so we both get our needs met.
So that almost, to me, sounds like coming from a place, and I know a lot of people really have a problem with this word, but a place of more of servitude.
Servitude?
Yeah, I mean, no, in a good way. So I mean, obviously that word got you too. When I talk about the word servitude, I mean coming from a place of helping people have their needs met. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes. And if we actually, I know that word just really charges a lot of people. In the art of Tantra, when we are actually in art of surrender and of servitude of our partner, what we're doing is we're looking at our partner's needs and actually creating a place where we can meet them. Instead of coming to a place where, what can you do for me? Yeah. What can I do for you? Indeed. And of course there has to be a balance of that, right? Yeah. Because otherwise, and I think a lot of women are balanced too much that way, of how can I meet your needs, but not putting their needs out there too. Yeah, and I suspect that the most important thing is building a kind of trust with each other, so that each of you knows that the other one has your and the other person's needs in mind, and so forth. There's also a thing that Marshall has shared. You need to talk it in language that people can understand. You wouldn't say to a gang that was had guns loaded, you wouldn't say, when I see your guns loaded, I feel scared because I need safety. Would you be willing to put the guns down? Which I find hilarious. You'd say, I see you got guns. I'm out of here, or whatever. Yo, bro, you got the guns. Exactly. So it's got to be sincere and real, and not follow any formula. It's about connecting. Very nice. Well, I like that, and I like that. That's a great explanation. We had Veronica Monet on a while back, and she also teaches nonviolent communication. And so every time I hear a little bit more about this, I get a little bit more clarity, which is excellent, because I was having trouble with the strict format. Every time seemed a little bit contrived to me. Yeah, and it's not about contrivance, it's about connecting. Right. So we've just got a couple of minutes left. What would you like to say? Give me your website and that kind of information again, and if there's anything you want to say. Okay, my main website for my two books is pleasuresandponderings.com. I've also got a blog where I've got more excerpts from both of the books, and I've also got some sort of personal essay kind of things, and that's pleasuresandponderings.blogspot.com. And then my nonviolent communication one is communicationcoaching.net, because I'm a life coach as well. Excellent. And of course, I always have these archives on my all the radio shows on my website. So I have all your contact information will be there on my website under Tanya's radio show as well. And I just wanted to close out by saying we had the first ever Tantra speed dating a couple of weeks ago, and it was fabulous. 20 people all met, had an experience that they will not soon forget. 3 men asked 3 women to go to my couples intimacy class the next day. Whoa! And of those 3, 2 became couples. Whoa! And it was an amazing experience. I'm going to be doing a lot more. Tantra speed dating is going to be up in Vancouver next, but I'll be doing them here in Seattle again. It was so much fun. I'm teaching lots of classes. Coming up is the Tantric Goddess Lover class for women in December here. And up in Vancouver, I'll be teaching in December again. I'm teaching men's multi-orgasm, how to become a multi-orgasmic man. Gary's got his thumbs up. In Vancouver.
Is there a list yet?
Yeah, there's the list. Got my bunch of ebooks are out there right now, just getting their graphics, getting the finishing touches on the CDs and ebooks, and I'm looking forward to just keep on going and making new stuff and talking to excellent people. So happy to have you today.
That was great fun.
And I love the fact that we can have role models of mature, sexy, delicious women out there that think sex is awesome. And men, better use that email address. And I will talk with you all next week and having some more exciting guests. Take care.
You have been listening to the Tantra Love, Sex, and Intimacy Show with your host, Tanya Diamond. Don't miss next week's show at Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until then, visit our website at www.tanyadiamond.com. That's TANJA for more information on workshops and classes.